football. We're going to start with probably the best game of the week. I don't think that's probably, I think it is the best week. We have Texas at Alabama. Alabama comes in at it's floating back and forth, 7 to 7.5 point favorite. I think that this is going to be a good game for a multitude of reasons, but especially last year, it was so close. 2019, Alabama just barely edged out Texas. If it weren't for what's his name,
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young, yes, at quarterback, Alabama probably wouldn't have won. So for many reasons, before we really dive into the nitty gritty of it, I just my big overall take right now is that I don't think that this is an Alabama team that Nick Saban has led in the past.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that the line was 7.5. I mean, I assumed Bama would be the favorite, but there's a lot of hype around Texas this year. A lot of people that think Texas is back. Texas is the real deal. This is going to be the year they finally break through. Which I'm just on the wait and see plan, just because I feel like everybody says that every year. But yeah, I was a little surprised to see Bama as a 7.5 point favorite. I feel like that's a decent sized line. Just again, given what Texas is supposed to be, and Alabama is a little bit unknown. I mean, they're not unknown, but Jalen Milroe, new quarterback. We watched him last week. And he played well, but again, it's just so hard to get a real feel for him because it was terrible competition. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for this one. Last year was what were you gonna say?
I was gonna add on. It's really tough to get a read from the film because of the competition quality, and I mean, I don't think there's any way. I know Sark for sure isn't going to want to show Alabama what he's really got. And I know Saban's thinking that too. He's way too seasoned of a coach to come out here and pull out his big guns against Middle Tennessee State. But Sark with Rice, I don't think that. I think there's a lot of stuff that they kind of wanted to keep in the tank and not show.
Yeah, you do always get some of that. And I'm sure that factored in last week. And both teams, I'm sure, are also just looking ahead all off season. Yeah. It's not, I know you're leading up to week one and you talk about your week one opponent, but the reality is both programs they were looking for this game. I don't think either team expected to have any issues last week. Neither really did have any issues last week. They were both playing up for this one. So yeah, it should be a good game. Last year was really fun. Obviously there's the whole argument that if Quinn Ewers doesn't get hurt, Texas probably wins, or I know that's a common Texas argument. Hudson Card was, I think you and I have talked about this before. He was not as bad as people act like. Hudson Card came in the game and Texas couldn't do anything, but that really wasn't the case. If you go back and watch that game, if you look at his stats, I'm not saying Texas was as dynamic with him in the game. Sark started calling him more conservative, and at least initially the play calling got a lot more conservative, but Hudson Card honestly played fine. I didn't think it was, again, I know Quinn Ewers was the guy. He came out, he was playing really well those first couple possessions, but I feel like there's like this weird revisionist history where people look back on the game last year and they go, yeah, Hudson Card came in and that was it. But Hudson Card played pretty well. I thought there were other things. There was a missed field goal. There was that really weird, like non-safety call in the end zone, some things like that. So yeah, I think it'll be a really fun game this weekend. I hope it's a fun game this weekend.
Yeah. I don't know, you said that both teams they didn't really have like too many struggles last week. And I mean, yeah, if you look at the score, I think the Texas Rice game was misleading because I mean it was I want to say 38-10 was the final score, but Rice scored in like the final 2 minutes of the game against Texas third string. So really should be 38-3. However, after watching a little bit of the Alabama Middle Tennessee State, I do think that Alabama has a couple reasons for concern. There was one thing that, I mean, it's not going to really, you're not going to really notice it unless you're looking for it. But the first thing I noticed were the snaps. I just realized because I didn't go back and watch every single play, but even from the highlights, there was plays where Milroe's getting the ball at his feet He's catching at his feet. There was one play where I believe it was just like cleanly, or not, well, not cleanly, but it was snapped over his head. He had to go get the ball. He still made a play out of it, and it just seemed like the timing was off. He's kind of fumbling with the ball. So I do think that could be an issue coming into Texas this week if that isn't under control. That's definitely a very important part of the game that could cost a couple turnovers. Also, though, Jalen Milroe, concern for them. I think they all kind of regard the QB situation. He was sacked 2 times against Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee, yes, like we say, I mean, we give our respects to FBS programs, but it's Middle Tennessee, and you have Alabama. That just simply shouldn't happen. Maybe 1 sack, but sacked twice in the first half. I don't know. To me, that's kind of concerning for me.
Yeah. But again, week 1, coaches always say that teams make the biggest jump from week 1 to week 2. So a little sloppy, but we're going to get a much better read on both teams this week. I think that's for certain. Yeah, I feel like I'd probably take Texas to cover the spread on this one. If Texas is really going to be as good as advertised, I would think they'd be capable, especially at 7.5. 7 points gets tough because that's a touchdown push. But I think 7.5, I would take Texas. And I'm just kind of basing that off the hype. I didn't watch Texas last week, but I would, based off the hype, I would think they could cover the 7.5. Would be my thought.
I would agree. I saw some like condensed play with Texas, and to me, honestly, I mean, both teams passed the eye test, but it seemed like Texas had just more players than Alabama. They got some really good wide receivers. Slaughter's first name, but Andonai Mitchell, who he had a couple highlights against Rice. He just looked, I mean, with the eye test, he just looked special. And Jatavion Sanders were 2 that really stuck out to me. I think they could have a heyday against Alabama. Though Alabama does have a pretty elite secondary. They have Kool-Aid McKinstry back there, number 1. I did see, unbelievably too, this might have skewed my kind of perspective on that game, but there was a game where Kool-Aid, he's back there returning punts, and a Middle Tennessee guy hits him so hard he knocks his helmet off. It turned out to be targeting, so maybe a little cheap, but it was like crap. Like, I'm not used to seeing Bama guys getting hit like that. So that was different for me. But yeah, to bring it back, I think that Alabama, so Milroe, I think he proved in this game, much as he could prove that his arm is serviceable. He had 2, he had a 50-yard to, can't remember who it was, but he had a 50-yard touchdown to a guy in stride. Then he had another 30-yarder to the tight end that looked pretty good. All pretty good throws. We know he can run. He can run on his feet. To me, honestly, I thought his running, just his mechanics and the way he ran looked very similar to a quarterback we're about to talk about here, Jeff Sims. Honestly, it kind of gave me a little flashback to Jeff Sims. They're kind of the same body type. They have 2 great running backs, Alabama, Jace McClellan, and I can't remember the other guy. But I don't know. Just simply gut feel. Maybe not always the best thing to go off of, but after seeing both teams and the hype, like you said, I just think Texas, I think I would go with that spread easily. I would go. I'm not sure, because going into, where's Alabama? Birmingham, right?
Tuscaloosa.
Tuscaloosa. Going into Tuscaloosa, that's at nighttime. That's such a tough place to play. But yeah, I agree. I would definitely feel comfortable taking Texas with the cover on that one.
Yeah. Cover, and I wouldn't be surprised if 54.5, I guess it's not a ton of points, but probably lean under based off what we saw last year.
I would say so. That's true. Both pretty competent defenses.
Yeah. Well, Texas had a pretty good, decent defense. Alabama's defense was pretty spotty last year, up and down.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's true.
I just think early in the season, my initial thought would be Texas to cover 7.5 and under on points.
Mhm.